Good morning. I hope you're doing incredibly well. It's June and I'm wearing a fleece for some bizarre reason. It is branded. I've got my Savello logo on there. But the reason that I'm wearing a fleece is because for June, it's particularly cold, isn't it? I hope you're finding it okay. If you're watching this, you can comment. We will see the comments. Please do say hello and let us know you're watching. And I'm really honoured to present today a interview we recorded a little while ago with a gentleman called Emmanuel Asuquo. Emmanuel is a well-known financial planner and advisor who's going to give you and me, to be honest, during our conversation, an insight into his perspective on money, financial well-being, what it means for you, and why we do it. Now, what I want to do is explain a little bit about what we're trying to do with What Happens Next as a little reminder. So the What Happens Next LinkedIn community and the What Happens Next YouTube channel and everything we're doing at www.whathappensnext.life is about one thing: supporting us, particularly if we're in our 50s and 60s, at that crossroads of saying, I've had a career for a number of years, I'm thinking about what happens next in my life, and I want some knowledge, some inspiration, some interesting conversations about what the opportunities might be in that next phase of my life. Now, you'll notice that I'm not calling it retirement. That is intentional because, interestingly, when we work with our clients at Savello Financial Planning, my chart financial planning practice, the clients that we work with are not ready to stop. They might be ready to make a change, and typically that change is a positive one, but they're not ready to stop. And part of the reason is because they understand that, their previous life gave them meaning and purpose. The life that they want to move into, they still want to maintain a sense of meaning and purpose. They want to stay intellectually engaged. They want to make sure they're looking after other aspects of well-being, not only financial. And it's so interesting because, I'm a believer in making sure that we do give people the clarity in their financial situation so they can make really good quality informed choices about their life and the way they want to live it. And part of that is understanding how much is enough for you financially, seeing where you are, seeing whether there's a gap, and making some positive choices. However, our experience is that often that positive choice isn't one that means one day you're doing loads of work and then the next day you're doing no work. And that's why we want to reframe that conversation about retirement, because retirement for a lot of people isn't the right route. Like sort of one day doing loads of work and the next day stopping full stop might not be the route you want to take. But what you might want to consider is the positive changes you can make in your life if you know that you're going to be okay. So what happens next is about looking at financial well-being to a certain extent, and the conversation with Emmanuel today is going to be a lot about financial well-being. But what we're also going to be doing is and we've got loads and loads of videos on the YouTube channel already and on the What Happens Next website, www.whathappensnext.life, looking at taking a bit more of a helicopter view and looking at well-being more holistically. So what does that mean? It means that we look at purpose. When we get up in the morning, what are we getting up for? Because previously work probably filled a decent amount of how purpose fitted into our lives. And what do we do if we decide that we don't want to do that work anymore? Physical well-being, ultimately our health is super important, particularly as we get older and as we're thinking about what we want to do in that next phase of our life. And we consider physical well-being in sort of three areas: exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And we're going to have a lot more conversations about all of those in the future. Financial well-being, have I got enough? And am I going to be okay? And we've certainly had a lot of conversations that you can see on the YouTube channel about that. Intellectual well-being. If we're used to using our minds to solve problems and help people and do all that work, how do we make sure we maintain intellectual engagement? Social well-being. Now, we know that loneliness, particularly as we age, is a killer. There was a recent statistic saying that the impact of loneliness was equivalent to 15 cigarettes a day. Now, that's incredible when you think about it, but certainly if our friendships were created at work, we might, if we're thinking about what happens next, need to think about what we need to do about that. And community. And community for me, I know that in my life, and I've written and talked about this quite a lot over the last few years, kindness, helping others has been super important. We know its positive impacts on well-being. There's loads of evidence to show that. And if you've got a bit more time on your hands in that next chapter, how do you use that time to potentially help others, but also help yourself and your own well-being? Now, we've got hundreds of videos on the What Happens Next YouTube channel now, talking about all those areas, and we're going to have hundreds more, because I want to carry on having these conversations that empower you to think about what happens next in a more holistic way. That transition, that crossroads can be a scary one. And what we want to do is make sure that we're just sharing conversations, knowledge, information in a wide range of areas that supports you to make that move a positive one. So hopefully you find the videos useful. Hopefully you're really enjoying the interviews we're doing with various experts in a wide range of areas of well-being. I know you're going to get a lot out of my conversation with Emmanuel, who is an amazing guy. Hope you enjoy it, and let's watch the interview. Good afternoon or morning. I don't know when you're going to be watching this, so it depends, I suppose. But welcome to the What Happens Next channel, the channel where we look at crossroads in our lives, making positive change, and thinking about what happens next from the perspectives of all different types of well-being. But today I want to talk about financial well-being and some of the component parts that we should think about when we're thinking about what happens next financially. And interestingly, I'm sure we're going to talk about some of the things we need to think about when we're a bit closer to what happens next, but also potentially when we've got some time to plan and prepare, and we'll be talking about that quite a lot today. I'm really pleased to be joined by Emmanuel. I've known Emmanuel now it's been a while, mate, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's been quite a while. But Emmanuel does great work both with his clients, but also in the public eye, promoting ideas and concepts around financial well-being, and we're going to be talking a lot about that today. How are you, mate? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris. Good to be here. How are you? How's everything?
Very good, thank you. Very good. For those of our audience who don't know who you are, tell us a bit about you.
Sure. I'm Emmanuel Asuquo. I'm a financial advisor. Have been for coming on to almost 17 years now. I have a partner in a firm called Belvedere Wealth Management, which offers financial advice, pensions, investments, life insurance, estate planning, etc. I also have a company called the E-Man Effect, which is basically a financial education company. So for people who are not quite ready for financial advice but still need help and support, I felt like they were being alienated, and so I wanted to provide financial services and knowledge and information to them to be able to make better financial decisions and get them ready so that when they are ready, they can then go to get financial advice. And then finally, I have a comparison website called onestopsave.com where people can compare car insurance, home insurance, travel insurance, loans, credit cards, and so forth. And that's targeted at working class people, to the everyday person, to really try and help them compare and make their money work as hard as possible for them.
Help me understand a little bit about what you find about the gap. So you know that you said about that gap in between
Yeah,
financial education and getting ready for speaking to somebody like you or I.
yeah.
What are the main component parts of that gap, do you think?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that typically, a financial advisor, when I first started, you needed to have around 50K to speak to a financial advisor. I think what we've seen is a lot of advisors have left the industry, and so now there are less advisors, but more people that need help. And so financial advisors are now saying, well, actually, you need 100K. And so we're at a point where if somebody, how does somebody get to 50,000 or even 100,000 if nobody's taught them how do you manage, £10,
Yeah.
£100, £1,000? So for me, it was really important to say, well, actually the people that need financial advice the most, the people that need the help the most, are actually being alienated from getting it because they either don't
It's a
have it.
real difficult one, right? Because like
Yeah,
people like you and I who want to do some good in the world,
yeah,
actually there's a bit of a I don't know if you find this, but there's a bit of an element where you've got your business hat on, going, well, actually, that running a regulated business means that I can only service X amount of clients, and therefore I need to make some really tough commercial decisions, but you still want to help. And I'd imagine that's where the education piece comes into play.
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes, like the way I always see it, like as financial advice, it's not the cure to cancer, but it's imagine having the cure to cancer and then saying, well, you need to have 50K before you can get it. Like that's
Yeah,
almost what
no,
we're
get it.
doing. Do you know what I mean? We've got this
Yeah,
this thing that we know that if people make XYZ changes, we know it can make a positive impact not only on their lives but on their kids' lives and generations to come. Yet we have a commercial side that says, well, we can't afford to give this to everybody. So, and for me, I just wasn't me coming from a background of, a council estate and a very working
okay.
class background. It felt very wrong for me to be helping people and every day the people I'm helping don't come from a similar background to what I came from. And it's like, actually, you want to be the change that you want to see. So it was really important for me to go back and say, how can I offer some help and some support to people who need it? And I know they need it because I needed it and my parents needed it, and they never had it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I don't know how you feel about this because we're from fairly similar backgrounds,
Yeah,
East London boys who have done all right.
yeah,
But the interesting thing is, I was lucky enough to learn through getting involved in a profession that taught me about money.
yeah.
But not everybody gets that chance, do they?
No, exactly. And not everybody is really comfortable with money. Some people
Yeah,
might just be an artist and, prefer to maybe really good at speaking or drawing or whatever it is,
yeah,
but everybody makes financial decisions every single day. So whether or not you're really, really up with numbers and really confident with money or not, you are going to have to make financial decisions, whether to take a bus or a train, whether that is, do I bring food from home or do I, have lunch out? All of these things are financial decisions and are impacting the money that you do have and the money that you might not have in regards to savings because you're spending it. So you need to be able
yeah.
to be in a position where you can make these
Get
decisions
the
comfortably.
foundations right. Yeah, no,
Exactly, exactly.
completely get that. And I suppose the question that I was asking before is where do you think the biggest gap is? When you're doing the education
Yeah.
piece, where do people go, oh, you know what? I wish I would have known that 5 years ago.
I think the biggest gap, and this is the one that I think blows people's mind, is that money is a tool to make more money. I just don't think no
Yeah,
one's really ever taught money in that sense. We always understand money from a point of view of I've got money and I can now buy something. That's how but you haven't really been taught I've got money. Actually, I can use this money to make myself more money. That concept isn't taught on a day-to-day basis.
it's really interesting. I've been thinking about this quite a lot. That element of compounding, that
Yes.
element of having something and then building on it. I think it might be not only with finances, but health. You
Yeah,
know, it's like sort of that little bit just building up over 10, 20, 30 years. That that experience of compounding anything and building on something, I think is probably the most underrated thing in the world, right? You know, it's like
yeah.
people don't talk about the power of compounding.
No, exactly. And I think, like you said, just in life in general, like there are so many things that actually, if we compounded it, if we did it regularly on a regular basis, it would continue to build and grow and flourish. And I think, just in life, we're just not taught life from that point of view. It's very straight cut. You go to work, you make money, you pay your bills, and then you
You
start the
spend it,
cycle again. You
yeah,
spend it, and then you
yeah,
start it again. And actually, I always compare it to, in life, we're on a journey. But I feel like a lot of people that I meet, they're stuck at a roundabout. So we're moving, but you're not actually going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, whereas I guess my job as a financial advisor is to take you from where you're at to where you want to be and try and get those steps in place to get you there. Whereas I think a lot
yeah.
of people are at a roundabout where you're working really hard, but you're just going around in circles. And actually, although you've got loads of steps on your phone and you can look, oh, I've done a lot of steps, you've actually gone nowhere.
You're right, going round and round in circles, right? Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
No, I completely get that. I tell you the other thing that I that really resonates with me is that learning compound. Like I
Yes.
read a lot, and it's like how much do, and the problem is there's never enough for me. It's like I learn something, I go, oh god, there's something else I need to learn. So that everything's, most things I look at have a compounding effect in some way, shape, or form. It's really interesting. One quick question, because I think about this quite a lot. What would you have loved to know growing up in Tower Hamlets? I was in Newham. I don't. That's definitely not posher than Tower Hamlets, mate. But it's um, growing up in Tower Hamlets. What would you have loved to know as a kid growing up in Tower Hamlets right now? Like, what would you have like thought? Oh, that would have changed my perspective a bit.
I think the biggest thing that has even changed my perspective now is just value over money. I feel like I didn't learn that till so growing up not having much money felt like it was the answer to all my problems. And so all we ever chased was how can we make money? How can we make money? How can we make
Yeah,
money?
gotcha.
But when you make money and realize that, okay, I've got money now, but I'm still not fulfilled, then what does it mean? Like, what you don't feel like, what was the point? Do you know what I mean? Whereas when you understand the power of value, like if I can help someone, if I can create value for someone, money will follow. Like I don't wake up every day now thinking about I need to make money, I need to make money. That was the old
No,
me. The new me wakes up, who can I help? If I can find somebody to help, money will follow. I don't need to focus on making money. I just need to focus on creating a skill and finding people that I can help, and the money will come. And it's such a much better way to wake up and feel like I'm actually making a difference to society by changing that mindset shift.
100%, and it's the reason when we talk about what happens next, which came from a conversation I had with a client who was financially independent. He'd never run
Yeah,
out of money again, who was waking up and saying, well, I thought that was the answer, and now I've got enough, so what do I do? And
exactly.
it's that purpose and values element, isn't it? That bit in the
Yes.
middle where you go, well, what am I getting up in the morning for? And it's really interesting because funny enough, I was talking about this on a call I had earlier on. I've started journaling. One of the habits that I started in 2024 is journaling. So get up in the morning, do 10 minutes thinking about the day, and just seeing what I'm thinking that particular morning. And what I wanted to do is set up a framework for my journal. So I thought about it in a bit more of a clear way. So I'm thinking about the questions that I want to ask myself. And you're right. The one, like, not at no stage did I think I need to put, how do I make money today? But one question that came time and time again was, how do I make a positive impact today?
Yeah.
That's the question for me. And I think you're right. If you continue to focus on doing that, everything else comes, right? Because then
Yeah.
you get known as somebody, yeah, it's really, really insightful, that like start with the purpose and values. Um, so on that note, and we talked about the work you're doing as a financial planner, but also the work you're doing in financial education. Where did
Yeah.
the idea for a comparison site come from, and how did that become what it is today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the comparison site came from me going around the country helping people. I mean, I've gone to Blackpool, I've gone to Scotland, gone Wales, all over the country, and realizing that I can only do so much. I can only be in one place at one time, and actually, people need the knowledge that I'm trying to give at all times. So how do I
Yeah,
create
yeah,
something, a platform where even if you can't get access to me, you have access to tools, access to the things that you need to make better decisions from someone that you trust, someone that has
yeah.
your best interest at heart. And so that was where it was like, actually, let's create this one-stop shop, a place where people can come and they can find their answers to what they're looking for, and everything's in one place. And by doing that, it means that I don't need to go to that event. I can just log online and get that information and find it in this one place. And that's the comparison site.
Love that. Absolutely love that. It's really interesting. One of the things that comes up sort of when I'm working with clients quite often is that experience of they've had conventional careers.
Yeah,
They're now thinking about what happens next in their life, and they might be thinking this might be the right time to start my own business.
yeah,
Now, I'm pretty sure that when you started and when I started, the conventional career for a financial advisor was you got a job at a bank and you just carried on working there.
exactly.
And then you realise over time that actually there's other routes. And I know you talk a lot about business ownership and entrepreneurship as a route to wealth with your audiences. If somebody was thinking about what happens next in their lives and thinking, I want my what happens next to be starting my own thing business wise, what first steps would you think about and how would you recommend they start?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think when it comes to thinking about, starting a business and like really think about number one, like I said, the value that you can add. What are you bringing to it? And I use you, Chris, as a great example. How I came across you was I was literally at a point where I almost hated financial services. I hated financial advice, and I just felt like it didn't exist for people that wanted to do good. I got to the point where I just felt all
That's a
financial
real
advisors,
shame, isn't it?
yeah,
That's
I just felt
such a shame.
all they care about is money. They don't really care about the client. It's all sales. How many people are you seeing? How much have they got? Sell, 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 because that's the bottom line, and that's what you got to do. You got to sell and be compliant. And I got disillusioned, and so I started to search for who's doing it different. What else is out there? And that's how I came across you. And the thing about you is, it's not that you're doing anything different in regards to financial advice. What you're doing is in the ethos about it.
Yeah.
You truly brought yourself to your company. And so by doing that, by bringing your background, everything you've been through, your unique point of view in life with the things that you've been through, by bringing that to a financial advice firm, you now stand out from the rest because you bring a unique thing that you've been through in life. And anyone starting, that is a great example. It's not about starting the business because you're not going to be the first. There'll be other businesses. What you need to ask yourself, what do I bring? What have I been through in life?
It's
What's
that
my
uniqueness,
experiences
isn't it?
that
Yeah.
that brings it uniquely, that can bring people, that will naturally bring people to me because of my point of view. And what you've done is your experience in life, like growing up in East London, the things you've seen, the good, the bad, the ugly, you've brought that and said, actually, I'm going to bring this and do this in my way, which
Yeah.
is different from everyone else. And there'll be some clients that will be like, I don't want that. I want the numbers. I want the money. I want the nice business card. I want the glossy brochures. But there'll be a lot of people who will resonate with you and will come to you. And that's the difference in business. It's one thing for us to do adverts and try and get people in, but it's another thing when our brand and our ethos brings customers to us.
Yeah, and we've experienced that. Like sort of
Exactly.
it acts as a bit of a magnet. And I think for me, it means that I get up every morning and enjoy it because I'm
Exactly.
just being me, right? That's the reality of it. So, what do you think? Because you've done amazingly well in terms of building your brands. What do you think makes you different?
Yeah. You know what? I think the thing that makes me different is the fact that I can bring what I really enjoy is that, you know, I grew up in East London. It was tough and it was hard, but at the same time we had fun. Like, one
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
about, if you understand East London, we're very much this whole banter thing. That's what we grew up in. Like, in East London,
yeah,
it's all day. Like, as much as things are hard, you got to laugh. You got to find a reason to
yeah.
laugh and find a reason. Like, and so we'll always look for something to smile about, something to laugh about. And, you know, someone will take the mick out of someone and you wouldn't take it personally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I felt like that was something that I could bring to my audience, to my delivery when creating my content. And so what I decided to do was just add a bit of banter, add a bit of fun, add a bit of tongue in cheek. Some people might be a little offended, but people will know the heart of where it's coming from.
But it's interesting when we look at the perspective of money, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
people turn around and go, right, well, we've got to be really serious about this. Well,
exactly.
like money, all money is really is a tool to live your life. And you wouldn't live your life in a super serious way. So why are you treating that tool in a way? And it's interesting. I have this conversation with clients, and it's funny. We've got a document we give out to all clients saying, says "Welcome to the family." So
Yeah,
it talks about our values, and what we say is funny enough, one of our values is fun.
yeah,
And the way that we talk about it is we take our responsibilities to you seriously, but we're going to have a real laugh along the way, and it's the way you want to treat it, isn't it? It's really, really good. I love that. I share that value completely with you, mate. So you're thinking about what happens next. You're thinking about starting a business. Think about the value you add to the world, and your own values, right? What you
exactly.
stand for. What happens if you're not sure what value you add to the world?
I love that, and that's where it's about. Sometimes when you're not sure, try things. I think also one of the good things is that just try stuff, try something new.
Yeah,
Like, especially if you got to the point where you maybe not necessarily relying on this thing to feed your family or send your kids to school. You can afford to fail. I feel like we've grown up in a point where people feel like failure is a bad thing and they want to avoid it and it's embarrassing. I tell people the reason I'm so successful is I've failed so many times I had to pass eventually. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like, imagine doing a test and doing the same test over and over again. Eventually, by round 5 or 6, you already know, I've seen this one before. I know this. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you can actually fail your way to success. And actually, if you embrace the fact that every time I fail, I learn something new, then why would I be afraid to fail? It's just a new way to learn not to do it. And so
love it.
by embracing that, actually what happens is you try stuff and you realize, oh no, I don't like that, or I don't like this, or I'm actually quite good at this. I didn't realize that I was actually good at this. Maybe I can try this. And then also I say, why not partner as well? Sometimes if you can find similar people that have similar, let's reduce your risk. Let's partner with. Sometimes we want 100% of nothing. Like, we
Yeah,
want to own
yeah,
100%,
yeah,
have our name on the door, have everything, all the shares in our name, but actually
yeah,
it's not doing any good. So it's worth nothing. Sometimes actually, if you can find someone to go along the ride with and you enjoy their company and you get along and you have a similar ethos, partner up. And then the things that you're not so good at, they can pick up, and the things that you're good at. And that makes it a lot more easier to kind of be successful.
yeah. And I mean, you made some really important points there. I think business alone, and I probably made the mistake of starting my business on my own. And if I did it again, I don't know if I would, to be honest.
Yeah.
I would find a partner, because actually it can be quite lonely,
Yes, definitely.
doing it on your own, and doing it in partnership. I absolutely make sense. But I'm a real advocate, and I'm writing the What Happens Next book at the minute. I'm a real advocate of a concept that is talked about in a book that I love called Design Your Life. And the concept is low cost experimentation. Try stuff, see if you like it, see if it fits, see if there's a commercial model around it. And if it doesn't, fine, you haven't lost anything. But if it does, you'll find your way. You know,
Yeah.
that low cost experimentation is absolutely brilliant. Now, I know that one thing that I love about the work that you do is it feels like you're on a bit of a mission. And I love the mission of democratizing money so we have more open and honest conversations about it. But if you could share one piece of knowledge with everybody you speak to about how they could change their lives financially for the better, what would
Yeah.
it be?
I say the same thing in every meeting, and everyone thinks whenever I sit down with a client, they think I'm doing a therapy session. But the number one thing I tell them is love yourself. I feel like the reason that for a lot of people, the reason you're struggling when it comes to money and finances is that no one ever told you to love yourself. Like, you're actually special, that you're important. A lot of clients that I meet are using money for validation. That whether it be the
Yeah,
car that they drive, the house that they live in, the job title they have, how much income they make a year, all of these things validate them. And so the second they lose any one of those things, or the second someone has a nicer house or a nicer car, all of a sudden their validation is gone. But if you already understand you're special, you're unique, you're wonderful, and everything else is a bonus, all of a
true.
sudden you look at your money different, the way you spend it, how much you all of a sudden you don't need to go to Waitrose or Marks and Spencer to make yourself feel good. You just need to get the food that you need to get. And so you start to make different decisions with your money, and therefore you start to have more money. And because you have more money, we can then start to invest and do stuff different. But if you constantly need items and material things to validate you, you will always be chasing money, because there'll always be something else to buy. There'll always be a newer iPhone. There'll always be a newer this, and you'll end up in a cycle of never feeling like you have enough.
Love that answer. How important do you think self-development is in financial well-being and the importance that we have with a relationship with money?
It's critical, and I know you do this as well. Because you're old school like me, and when we got into financial advice, the biggest thing that they taught us was the education piece. Like,
Yeah,
you had to educate your clients. I don't know about today, the way, things are run today, but when I first started in the bank, the biggest thing that we had to do was educate your clients, because actually, when you educate them, you empower them, and it's less of me telling you what to do. It's more a case of you now understanding it, and you're just asking questions for that further knowledge, because I'm qualified. And so
yeah, yeah,
for me, like, when I sit down with my clients, I want the self-development is that I don't want you to be dependent on me. I don't want you to get your statement and you don't understand what the statement says.
yeah,
I don't want that
yeah.
to be the whole time, because actually that means that you are relying on me. I want you to understand it to a degree. So I will sit down with you and explain this stuff to you to make sure you know, because once you know, then you can then go and teach your kids and your aunties and uncles and brothers and sisters and friends. And all of a sudden, all the people that I can't reach, because I can't speak to everyone, by empowering you, I have now empowered the whole community.
But
That's the importance.
what's really interesting about that is that, number one, the ripple effect is at 100%, isn't it? Like,
Yes.
if we're thinking about positive impact and the impact we make on our lives, telling somebody what to do doesn't create a ripple effect.
No.
Explaining it and giving it a story and then going, okay, please share and do that is amazing. The interesting thing about how our roles probably changed since the days working in the bank to now
Yes.
is it's a lot more about psychology and a lot more about
Yes.
emotion and a lot more about thinking about how the stories we tell ourselves and what we believe. And it's interesting, isn't it, that yes, we can have all of the knowledge about money, but if we've not got the emotions right. So how do you explain that to clients in terms of the stories they tell themselves about money?
Oh, when you were speaking, the first thing that came to my mind is that for a lot of clients, when we get down to that kind of goal base, what's your goals? For a lot of them, they think, when I speak to clients at the beginning of my meeting, they'll talk to me about, I need to make more money, I need to get a pay rise, I need to do all of these other things. By the time they've got the knowledge and understood, the main thing they realize is, I need more time. It's not
Yeah,
money anymore.
100%.
Like,
100%.
once I explain to them what we do and how we do it, they understand that the whole goal is, yes, there'll be a period where you have to work a lot and you're not going to have as much time to do the things that you want. But the whole point you're working this hard is to get more time to do the things that you want. But
Well,
actually, when you came,
time's a finite resource, isn't it? The money
exactly,
isn't. Time is the finite resource. Yeah,
Exactly. And so when you came into my room, because you didn't have the knowledge and understand, all you thought was, I need to make more money and that will make me feel better. But actually, the things that are going to make you feel better is spending time with your kids and spending more time with your partner and being able to go on holidays and spend time away and experience new cultures and maybe learn a new skill. These are things that are actually important to you. And the
100%.
whole money part is to give you the time to be doing the things that you want to be doing. And actually,
Oh,
when you realize that, and another thing I always tell people is that the goal is not to work forever. And again, when people come into my room, I ask them, do you want to work forever? And they'll say no. But by the time we've gone through the fact find and looked at how they spend their money, I let them know that the way you are using money today says you want to work
means that
forever.
you're going to need to. Yeah.
Do you know what I
Here,
mean?
here, here's the first time we might disagree during this interview, right? And we might not, but here's my perspective on it, right? I like work. I
Yeah,
enjoy work. And I think work adds value to my life in ways that aren't related to the money.
yeah,
What I think our role is to give people the choice, right?
yes,
So financial independence for me isn't about turning around and going, right, I'm giving up. Because actually, if I'm doing work that's meaningful, purposeful,
of
adds
course.
to the world, and that doesn't need to involve money often. It could be voluntary, it could be charity, it could be community, it could be all
Yeah,
this sort of stuff. But work optional is a really big thing because actually having the choice means that you can really do what you want to do. And that element is like, I think often when we think about giving up work, it's because we don't love what we do that much.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but having that perspective of going, making work optional, I think is vital. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. And when I talk about work like me, I there are parts of my job that the things that I do that is work, but there's parts that I love what I do. So you see what I
Actually,
do
yeah,
today, every day. If I didn't get paid, I would still wake up. I'd still create content. I'd still give talks. I'd still go to schools. I still everything I do today that I love, I would still do whether you paid me or not. I just get the privilege of being paid to do it. So that's
yeah,
when you
yeah.
found what you love and your passion. For a lot of people, when I'm talking about work, is that you have that night, the alarm rings and
Yeah,
you don't
we're
want to go
lucky.
to work.
We're fortunate in terms
Exactly.
of like, yeah, no, you're right, you're right. But that element of, you know, I mean, I suppose one of the questions that I love the most is if you weren't being paid, how would you spend your time? You
Exactly.
know, what would you actually do with it? It might be a little bit of what I'm doing now, but it might be different. And that work optional thing is really really important. Now, I know that on the because I do my research, Emmanuel. You know I do.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
like to make sure, and we've known each other for a while, but I wanted to make sure that I really understood what was going on One Stop Save. You
Yes.
talk you talk about financial wellness on there. What
Yeah.
does financial wellness mean to you in practical terms, and how do we make sure we maintain financial well-being?
Yeah, because it's so important because what we're talking about when we're talking about financial wellness is the fact that for a lot of people, when you think about money, you think about stress. Money is a burden. Money is a problem. Actually, and again, this is why I do so much talks at workplaces. Companies actually pay me to come in and do talks to help their because if I always when I speak to CEOs, I tell them if your staff are worrying about how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to keep a roof over their head, how they're going to send their kids to school, how they're going to find money to buy stuff for their kids' clothes. How much time do they actually have to do the job that you're telling them to do?
Yeah,
What
yeah,
capacity do they have? And so actually it becomes a burden not only for them but also to you. And staff turnover is something that again is a big cost to companies. So if you
yeah,
find the right staff and you've got good people, invest in them so that they don't have to worry about these things that they are worrying about day to day. And
yeah,
so for me, financial wellness is actually looking at what are the things when it comes to money and finances that is affecting your mind state, affecting your life. What are the hurdles or the barriers that you're facing when it comes with money that actually affects you in your daily life? And how do we overcome them? What are the skills? What are the tools? What are the things that are available for us to overcome them both mentally, physically, and also when it comes to our relating to one another. So another example is that actually you might be okay with money, but if your partner loses their job, what effect does that have to your household? What does it affect to have on their self-esteem? We're seeing it now where a lot of people are being made redundant. And again, because your validation came from being able to work, now you're struggling to get a job. All of a sudden, you don't know who you are anymore.
Yeah. And that's an interesting transition in terms of a lot of people who are thinking about what happens next. Because sometimes what they're doing is turning around and going, well, I am a business leader and I'm not
Yeah,
anymore. So who does that make me? And that's an interesting transition. And we think about losing a job as losing a job, but it's not. It's losing purpose and identity as well. And they're all
exactly.
parts of the mix. If you could share only 3 things that would help somebody become more financially healthy or have better financial well-being, what would they be?
There's so many. I think we mentioned obviously that self-worth, self-love, understand yourself first. I think that's vital. I think
Yeah,
I think then it's about having a plan. I think like knowing your why and having a plan. I think one of the biggest problems is that if I know that my plan is to buy a house, if my friend buys a car, that shouldn't affect me because I don't want a car. I want a house. But
yeah,
if I don't know my why and my plan and what I'm working towards, every time someone around me, oh, this person just started a new business. Now I want to start a new business. Do you know? Every time
yeah.
someone else
It's the
starts to
next
achieve
shiny
around you,
thing. But it's interesting. I, funny enough, like you talk about the know thyself stuff. In my world, we like when I was doing the interviews for the Kindness Project, and when I was thinking of when I wrote the book for that, um, I was thinking about how do we structure this book and how do we make sure it adds as much value as possible. And it was weird, like explain the story behind the Kindness Project as part of the book. But chapter 1
yeah,
about how to think about kindness was be kind to yourself. And I
yes,
write in that about comparison being the thief of joy. You know,
yes,
that bit always, they've got a Tesla, new model Tesla. Actually, it doesn't matter, but you're right. You need to understand yourself first to see what matters to you, right? It's absolutely
definitely.
brilliant. And then when you talk about the strategy and having a plan, um, it's fun. You probably get this as well. I get a lot of people coming and going, can you have a look at my pensions and my investments and seeing how they're getting on? I
Yeah,
go, yeah, probably, but what do you want to get out of this? and
exactly.
often it's either I've got a specific goal, I want to buy a house. Often it's I want to know I'm going to be all right, number one,
Yeah,
or I want to know if I've got enough, number two. They're the big questions that people want answers to. So self-worth, comparison being the thief of joy is really important. Having a plan, number two. What's number three?
I think number three, and this is where I feel like when we talk about it depends whether you have kids or not. But for me, because I have kids, I think is about that generational actually bringing them in. So with my kids, one of the things that when it comes to money is that I involve them in everything. So for example, we were buying a new house and we're saving to buy a house, and I told the kids we're saving to buy a house now. So all of a sudden, no more McDonald's, no more. Do you know what I mean? All of these we had to
Yeah.
make. They had to make the sacrifices too. And I remember being in the car one day driving and drive past the McDonald's, and one of my kids was like, "Oh, can we go to McDonald's?" And before I could say anything, the other one said, "We're buying a house. We're not eating McDonald's. There's rice at home." Like, do you know what I mean? And it's like actually involving them with the shopping list. We involve them. Financial education is something that should be taught at home, and we are
Yeah.
so reliant on schools. But actually, if we equip ourselves, then we can equip our children. And so, for
Yeah.
me, it's that number one, you have to search out for knowledge for yourself. And then two is then share that knowledge with your children and be intentional. Do you know what I mean? Really be intentional. When I say be intentional, I mean think about what are the podcasts that you listen to? What when you're in the car, what are you listening to? Do you know what I mean? When you're what books are you reading? Like actually sometimes we have to understand that money and finance is a life skill. It's a
Yeah.
life skill and we have to be intentional about it.
Yeah, and that I mean, we do live in a world where there's loads of opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And actually surrounding yourself in that environment for you and your kids is a really important thing to do. I mean, I'm always, watching sort of YouTube videos of stuff that I want my kids to learn, and hoping it comes off. There's a great interview if you're interested in this subject about teaching your kids. There's a great interview we did, funny enough, for What Happens Next with Will Rainey,
Yes,
who
Will.
wrote a book called Grandpa's Fortune Fables, which is effectively a storybook about helping your kids and grandkids, if you're watching this and you're a bit older, about sort of living that life. So I'd love to know, if you're watching this, what you actually think of Will's book. I think it's personally brilliant, and
Yeah, Will's amazing.
he does really good work. He does amazing work. Here's my big challenge, and this is me personally, but I'm sure a lot of a lot of the audiences are going to feel this as well. I grew up thinking that hard work was a really important part of sort of my journey. My kids are more
Oh Lord,
comfortable.
I know exactly where you're going with this one.
Yeah, exactly. How do we make sure that you hear about these stories of like wealth, intergenerational wealth actually being a bit of a challenge because the lessons we learn through bitter experience, they don't learn. How do we make sure that kids of the next generation after that, if that's what we're worried about, adopt the same behaviors and learn the same lessons from life?
It's a great question. I think there are at the end of the day, the more successful you are, the more you achieve, the harder it's easier it's going to be for your kids, and that's the reason you're working hard. Like some of the things that we probably saw growing up, Chris, we'd never want our kids to ever see or experience. So it's great that they haven't had to go through that. So it's that number one, we shouldn't feel bad that our kids haven't gone through what we've gone through. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, like you said, a lot of the things that we've been through in life gave us the drive. Now, I always say I can't give my kids the drive to do stuff, but what I can do is give them what I call the kind of outline of what it is to be in a super. So with my kids, we have this is what we are about as a sucrose. These are the characteristics, these are the habits, these are the core fundamental, we don't change on this. Like, you know what I mean? Something like we don't lie, we don't steal, we're very honest and open with one another. You know, we try to smile, it's very important to be polite. We respect our elders. These are things that have been taught to me that my kids know, as in it's standard. Now, whether my kid is going to be as successful as me or want to be as hungry and desire because maybe they don't have to be, that's difficult. And it's hard to force them to be as driven. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm coming from the bottom. So I had to be driven. They're not seeing that, so they might not have that. But in regards to their personality and their persona and how they act in the world, that I can control and that I can make sure they understand. And so that's the part that I really the type of child or the type of human that I tell them, I'm not judging you on how much money you make. I don't care how successful you are. I'm judging you. Whether I'm successful as a father is based on the person that you become.
Yeah. Are you aligned to what you believe about the world in terms of values?
Exactly.
And actually success, as we know from our own experiences and certainly the experiences that we have with our clients. So success isn't defined by the bank balance alone. It's defined by a more nuanced, rounded opportunity. Exactly. And it's funny. We call it Team Dames values. So we talk about what we stand for as a family as well. It's really interesting. So how old are your kids now? Tell me about that.
So Malachi is 12, Ethan is 10, Ellie is 8, and Mia is 5.
You've got a busy life, mate.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
So intentionally. But yeah, absolutely love that. And let me ask you a question. I've got my two are 20 and 12 now, so they're a little bit older.
Yeah.
What lesson have you most learned from your kids?
I think my kids teach me stuff all the time, but I think the biggest thing that my kids teach me is about being fair. And I think it's something that I remember watching an interview with Barack Obama and him saying that his daughter's best friend they had 2 months, and so he felt like he had to change policy because his daughter had more influence on him than anybody outside because that's who he raised. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so when
yeah,
she said, "Well, this policy that you have in this country isn't fair because my best friend has 2 mums and they should be able to have the same rights." It's different when it comes from your child than when it comes
yeah.
from
It's
outside.
interesting, isn't it?
And
Yeah,
so for me, when my kids challenge me on certain viewpoints that I might have of growing up and being in a different world, I have to listen and take it in, and they teach me about life in the world that they live in. The other day we was in a cinema and there was a child in front of us. I took them to watch Spider-Man, and there was a child in front of us making noise. And I looked at my kids and they didn't flinch, they didn't blink. And when got out of the cinema, I was like, "Oh, you didn't say anything. How comes?" And they were like, "Oh, it would be wrong for us, to say anything because we know that they can't help it because they have a disability, and so we wouldn't." And I was like, "You're 10 and 12 and you
yeah,
understand this." And
yeah,
actually,
yeah.
that's the time I was so proud. I almost cried because actually, when I was at their age, I didn't have that level of understanding and
Insight.
that
Yeah,
compassion, insight. And
yeah.
so it was so fantastic. And so my kids teach me about life and the world from such an innocent place. And so for me, that is the biggest lesson I get from them.
No, I absolutely love that. So this is magic wand time in the interview, Emmanuel. I'm going to give you a magic
Yes.
wand. You can change anything about how we perceive money in the UK and how we teach it or how we think about it or what we need to know. Your magic wand changes everything in the UK today. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with
Oh,
that one wish?
oh, oh. I just I think there's so much that needs to get changed. But I think that when it comes to the mindset, I think I would love to change people's mindset in thinking that they only have to get paid 12 times in a year. Like there are 365 days in a year. Why only get paid on 12 of them? And I think when you understand that you can create value every single day, I'm not saying that you have to be, a multimillionaire or whatever, but actually, what the life you want to live, you can live it. Like, and
Yeah,
sometimes
I
people
agree.
say that, and it's like, oh, you're being like, you're giving false hope or full. Like the other day, I was sitting with someone, they were like, oh, I want to buy a house, and we worked it out, and it was like something like for the because there's two of them, it was if they saved over the next 3 years to get the deposit that they needed, they only needed to be doing like £50 a week. But when you think about the big goal, it seems so far away. Now I'm telling you, can you work out between you how you can make an extra £10 a day? Now, I'm not saying you have to be the smartest person in the world, but there is something that any one of us can do to make that small change to get the life that you want. You don't have to say, oh, I haven't been able to go on holiday, I can't afford it. Actually, what change can you make? How can you increase? Don't think about how you can cut, because sometimes I feel like we've done as much cutting as we can. But actually, how can you increase your
How can
income
we make
to
more?
live,
Yeah,
make more, to live the lifestyle that you want? And then also, you're saying you want to live that lifestyle. What changes are you prepared to make to get there? And if
yeah.
people could just see, like, understand that and see life in a different way, I think there'd be less of
Well,
us waiting for the government or waiting for somebody to save us.
yeah, I mean, they're definitely self empowerment's the way to go, isn't it? And
Yeah,
having the opportunity to do that. And I think the interesting thing is we're one of the great things about the modern age is number one, the knowledge is out there. If you want to learn how to do a side hustle, set up a recurring income, do whatever all of everything is out there for you to do it. And we are moving, and again, it's a generational thing, I'd imagine, because when my dad had a job for all of his life, but now you can have the opportunity to have a job and have a side hustle, or do whatever you
exactly.
need to make sure that you're generating income in any way you want. What do you reckon stops people? Well, why don't if we see the ability to do that
Yeah,
and the information's out there, what stops people taking that chance?
I think a lot of the time there's too much information. So
Yeah.
yes, the information is out there, but there's so much information out there. You don't know. You're scared of getting scammed. You're scared, will it work or will it not work? The person that's telling you, you might not relate to them, so you don't know if it's genuine or it's just like there's a lack of trust. So I think it's so important that like that you go and able to speak to people. And that's why I do the email effect, is that people are able to speak to me without the fact that yes, they might never become a client, but actually we can have this conversation and they can go on and change their lives. You know what I mean? They can go on and do stuff. And sometimes that side hustle might be renting a room. The amount of people that don't know that you can rent your room and make 7,500 a year tax free is unbelievable. But actually, are you willing to pay to get the advice? Is the question I put out to people. And sometimes we're like, I won't pay the £200 or £300 or whatever it may be to sit down with someone that can help me because I don't want to pay. But you want to see change. Or like sometimes you just have to be able to invest in yourself to get the change that you want to see.
Well, it's what you said about value, wasn't it? It's like cost is one thing, but if the value is going to be significantly greater, you go, actually that. And I think value is a really interesting one, because value isn't only in money, it's also in time. If you can, when I look at my life now, I turn around and go, what are the jobs that hold on, I'm still trying to work out what I'm actually good at, Emmanuel. Once I've done that, I'll start to do it a bit more often. But like, what are the jobs that I know that I'm not good at, and how do I make sure that I've got more time doing the stuff that I'm trying to get better at more often? And I think when you start thinking about money as a resource to generate what you want more of, which is time ultimately, then you can start thinking about it. Tell me about the Freedom Hub, because I looked on the website and you've got a community, right? Tell me about the community you've got.
So I've got the Freedom Hub, which is basically, I almost call it like a financial advisor in your pocket, so I know that there are a lot of people that can't afford financial advice and so forth, and it can be too costly. So what I wanted to do, but I get a lot of DMs on Instagram, and so I can only answer so many, and it's a lot of time to give for free. And so what I tried to do was create the Freedom Hub, which allows people to be able to ask questions in a chat where I can then answer them. I also then update them with things like the stock of the week, or that they should be looking at, or a fund they should consider, or a dilemma that we can then discuss as a group, and just try and empower people, but do it through a group setting so that my time is more efficient than me trying to help people on a one-to-one basis. So that's basically the Freedom Hub. It's £50 a month, and we have quite a few people in there that now are growing and been able to, take decisions and take them confidently because they have the support and have access to me within the hub.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that model. And it's something we're going to be sort of building on what happens next for people who are going through that transition, helping people in a way that like fits in with their life and their budget. It's really interesting. I was having a chat with Pete Matthews, or Pete Matthew on Thursday. And he does brilliant work at Meaningful Money around creating the communities to support each other to make sure that we can move forward. I think as a model, that's absolutely brilliant. And I suppose my last question, when I'm thinking about it, is that sort of period of time when we might be thinking about what happens next. And typically, as a financial planner, we support people. Most of the clients who come see us are in their 50s and 60s, thinking about what happens next in their life. I keep on pushing back the age that middle age is, because I'm 46 now, Emmanuel. So and I'm probably in that early middle age. I don't know. I'm not. I still feel about 22 in the end. But what are the things that specifically we should be thinking about when we approach that middle age, when we're thinking about what happens next, do you think?
Yeah, great question. What I always tell clients is that what we are trying to do is buy time. We're trying to buy an income. Yeah. So to do that, we need to know what is the income level you need. So when you get to and to be honest, this is the question that a lot of time. How much
is enough, right?
What's enough? Like actually to live the lifestyle that you want. What is that number? And normally between 40 to 50 is when we start to actually we've worked, we understand what we actually need. We've spent money silly. We've made our mistakes. We know actually roughly I need around X amount. And if I got that on a monthly basis, I could have a decent life and everything could be all right. Obviously, if I got more, great. But there's a bottom line. And so for me, that's the first thing I would say is that now our job is what are the different ways that we can get to that number? Is okay. Let's say that number is £3,000. Maybe we can get £1,000 through property. We can get £800 through a pension. We can get £500 from your ISA. Oh, you've got a side hustle that you like. We can get all of a sudden you add those different incomes up, and there we go. And now it becomes possible. So all of a sudden now you now have purpose because I want to live. I want to be able to get to that point where my assets allow me to live life on my terms. So like you said, I've had a client the other day who quit being a solicitor to go and work in a charity shop. And I'm talking, they were earning, over 100K and now they're earning less than 20. But the charity shop is what gives them value and gives them purpose and they love the work they do there. But they can afford to do that now because when they were under 100K, they were putting that money away to allow them to go and have that on their own terms. Where there are people who are solicitors and earning over 100K that can't stop. So even when it gets draining, even when they've worked 16 hours in a day and it's killing them, they have no option other than to go back to work. So this is about what happens next. What is my plan for what happens next? That might mean I need to pay off my house. So sometimes you speak to people and they're like, oh, don't pay off your house. Like, don't go mortgage free. But actually for you, that might be what you need to do so you can get to your what happens next. So, but until you sat down with someone and planned it out, it's all just in the air and you're all just working to I'm going to stop work at 60. But can you really afford to do that? Is that really going to happen? So this is why it's so important to get the advice.
Interesting. I've had clients where the opposite applies as well, where they've carried on for longer, even when they could have stopped because they've got more than enough. And it's like this, you're telling me you want to live this life. I'm telling you you've got enough. What are you going to do? And empowering people with that knowledge is quite powerful as well. I love it.
No, it is.
You're right. You need to understand what your number is. You need to understand what enough looks like for you to do that. Otherwise, you've got no plan, right? Yeah. Emmanuel, I always enjoy our conversations, mate. It's been absolutely brilliant. Where can people find out a bit more about you?
Sure. So it's the Eman Effect UK on social media, on most social media handles, Instagram, TikTok and YouTube. It's Emmanuel Asuquo on LinkedIn. And team at emmanuelasuquo.com is the email and emmanuelasuquo.com is the website. And obviously the comparison site is onestopsave.com. So onestopsave.com is the comparison site.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate your insights and your time.
Thank you so much, Chris.